Okay.
Mm. Nah.
Okay. All right. So we're live. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here today. Um, I'd like to introduce our participants here. Ms. Shruti. Shruti is the creative director and VP of content for a globally revered network, and has been involved in it for a couple of decades in creating content and that's uh, crafting ideas for organizations like the Times of India, MTV, National Geographic, and Indamal, India. So why we have her here today is because she also is passionate about embracing obstacles and constraints and how that powers our innate creativity. So thank you for being with us today, Shruti.
Well, thank you. As I was telling Sandy earlier, it's not only an honor, but it's such a responsibility almost to be able to shape and influence young minds. So I just hope I can do justice to that.
I'm sure you will. We're looking forward to the conversation. And with us, as always, is Sandy Hooda. Sandy is co-founder of Vega. He is a successful entrepreneur and who realized that his education didn't properly prepare him for his success. And so he spent time, 3 years, traveling the world, studying the best schools and progressive education, and comes with a mission, a passion to really revolutionize education in his founding of Vega. So thank you for your time today, Sandy.
Thanks, Dan, for your kind introduction. One thing that I want to add to the introduction is that I also spend a lot of time looking for superstar educators, and that's how I found you. And we are so fortunate that you are someone of your pedigree and caliber is decided to move to India and is the director and principal of Vega Schools. So thank you for moving to India and helping India go forward.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes, I'm excited to be here and partner with you in this really exciting venture, this Vega School. So today's topic is mental toughness, which is also known as resilience. Uh, and so, kind of to get the ball rolling, let's kind of open it up, and maybe we'll ask Shruti, how did you become resilient? How did you develop your mental toughness, your strength and creativity under pressure?
And I know, sorry, I know that you had a near-death experience when you were 5 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, okay. So let's begin with that story, since stories are what I love telling. Like Sandy said, I was 5 years old, and I nearly died at that time because there was this huge tent that fell on me. So we lived in Delhi way back then, and there was a huge ground next to our colony, and that had a government school there. Now the school didn't have a proper pakka building, as you say, and every classroom was just one giant tent. And as kids, we loved playing there, climbing up and down. And I think it was one monsoon season, day off from school or something, and I was playing there with a friend of mine when a storm started building. So she ran off to her house, and I decided to run in the direction of my home. And as I was running, I was, passing under this tent, and the whole thing came crashing down on me. And as you can imagine, I was 5. This tent could seat 60 people. It was huge. It was the scariest experience I've ever had in my life. It was suddenly it got dark. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see anything.
Mm.
And what should have happened is I should have panicked. I should have passed out, or I should have just shut down. But instead, something exactly opposite happened. I don't know whether it was survival instinct that kicked in, but it was almost as if all my senses became heightened, and I started to look around for a ray of light. And I found one, literally one ray of light. I think it must have been coming from an opening which was barely this big, but I started to crawl towards it, and I managed to somehow crawl myself out of the tent and run home. I was bleeding, my clothes were torn, but I made it home safe.
Mm.
And somehow I think that became a theme in my life, maybe because of this early on experience. I'm not sure, but I felt the time that I performed my best or gave my best was when I was faced with an obstacle. It was um, almost like being locked down is a catalyst to unlocking new doors. And this idea of embracing obstacles and using them, to push yourself to be more creative or to be more alive in the situation and moment is something that's helped me in great stead through my life, and then also later on in my professional life when I chose the creative field. So, I don't know if there's anything that I learned by experience, but, maybe it was instinct. And I'm sure somewhere, we all have that, right? It's an evolutionary thing, survival of the fittest. So it's all there within us, is what I feel. And it's just about how you look at a tough situation, have a different paradigm shift, a different perspective on it, and use it as something to power yourself to do better. I think that is something that will help us be, more resilient, as you say.
Wow, that's quite a story. But we're so glad that you're here with us today.
So am
So yeah, so that's great. That so for you, that facing that obstacle pushed you. It was those things that pushed you to go higher and to drive more. Um, that's amazing. Thank you, Sandy. For you, obviously a successful entrepreneur. Um, how about you? Where does your creativity and drive come from?
Dan, I've always had an interesting relationship with failure. Um, when I was in school, I I honestly wasn't the smartest guy around or the strongest guy around, and I saw my friends do better than me in academics. I saw others do better than me in sports, and and then slowly I started gravitating initially towards sports, and I learned something really big, huge from sports, and that was that failure uh, is something that one should not fear. In fact, failure is something one should learn from. And and many years ago, my one of my mentors, he told me, he shared with me, he asked me a question. He said, "How do you define failure?" So I said this, I said that. He said, "No, no, no, no." And finally, he said that failure is something that there is no such thing as failure. So I said, "Wow, really? Say more." And he said, "Failure is, um, failure only occurs when we stop trying. And if we don't stop trying, we can never, ever, ever fail." And and he gave me the example that Thomas Edison, uh, he 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 failed over 100 times before he succeeded in making the light bulb. So so when we look back, Thomas Edison, we only look at his success.
Right.
So that was a great insight for me, and through sports as well, my relationship with failure changed, and I said, okay, I didn't do well today. What can I learn from it? How can I get stronger? So it became a stepping stone for the next thing, and that gave me a lot of confidence. So I kept working hard, and I became the games captain of my school, and that gave me a lot of confidence. And I started doing pretty well academically as well. So really, it was my relationship with failure and my approach towards failure that for me that changed everything. And I know, Dan, that that's something you do at Vega Schools. I mean, with problem-based learning. So you are the guru. Why don't you share a little bit
Well,
about what you do?
yeah, I think you both touched on something that's uh, in the same vein here. Faced with a challenge, faced with something that you were not prepared for, or that was thrust upon you, and how do you react? And that's what we want in our students, right? We want to have them be able to react to unknown challenges, and so that's why I think problem-based learning is so impactful, because that's how we approach it. We pose problems, and students are going to have to struggle with them, and we allow them to struggle. We guide them, we support them, but they're going to struggle, and often they're going to fail. But the goal is to build that skill in them, that capacity to struggle, and know that they can struggle and overcome, and know that they will sometimes not overcome, but not overcoming means finding a different way to do the problem. And maybe that's where the creativity comes in, is realizing, okay, like Thomas Edison said, something like, well, I've just found 99 ways, I've learned 99 ways not to build a light bulb. So he didn't
Yeah.
fail. Yeah. So we're hoping to do that, to build that practice, facing challenges. And so that kind of leads us into the question, well, what can we all do as parents? I'm a parent. What can we do as parents and as educators to continue to help our children become mentally tough? I know there's a lot of talk about overprotective parents, and it's a scary world. So where's that line? Shruti, what do you think? How do we help our?
Well, I mean, okay, so like I said, in the creative field, people often say that, one must think outside the box, right? But in my view, it's really learning to work within a box of limitations that really unleashes our creativity. And I've often found that, when I'm in those situations where more the obstacles in the path, more creative I had to be, and hence, better the final film or script or story. And let me give you an example. In February of 2020, we were working on this film, and we were ready to shoot. We had researched our characters, we had a crew, we had like a broad storyline we wanted to follow, and we were ready to go into field. And then, March 2020 happened, and we all know there was a strange virus that was beginning to spread. So we stepped back and we said, okay, fine, we will, put our crew in PPE kits, we'll sanitize our equipment, and, it's okay. We found a way, we were ready to go and shoot. And then April 2020, things got really serious. There was a lockdown, and, our global headquarters gave us a mandate that you can't go and do any in-field filming, and we were like, okay, how exactly do we make a film without filming? Like, this is getting a little crazy. And it was a huge constraint. So we came up with this idea of, turning our characters into actors. Oh, I must say, very interestingly and ironically, the film was on the coronavirus lockdown. So our lead characters were people like doctors and policemen and, journalists, people who are out there on the front lines. So we turned our characters into directors. We told them, you shoot yourself. And no fancy equipment, no high-end cameras. You can, use a phone if you have to, catalog your day. And we told them to speak to their friends and family at the end of the day, something that a director does, right? In-depth interviews, but we ask their friends and family to talk to them. The way they speak to their family or their husband at the end of a tough day is so different from how they would have spoken to a stranger behind a camera. So the footage we got, the moments we got, they were absolute gold. And then the entire film was put together, by our cast and by the crew, the editors and directors, and we aired it. And throughout the process, not a single member of the crew stepped out of the home. And the film did really well for us. It won the best documentary at one of the Asia Awards. So in a way, it took a lockdown for us to unlock our doors of creativity. So I keep coming back to that thing. It's about how you want to look at a difficult situation, and are you using it to spur your unleashing your creativity. So I've always found that when you are in a difficult situation, when you are in this box of limitation, it's that's something that can really unleash your inner creativity. And like you said, you are training kids right from an early age for this. It's not something they're gonna face in their first job. Right at the school level, you're training them how to face a problem and devise their own solutions. And you're telling them there's no wrong solution, there's no right solution, there's no failure, but there's only 10 different ways of trying and learning how to do a thing and not to do a thing. And in that, they discover their own path, which is so much more beneficial than just giving them a set path and say, hey, look, this is how this is done, please learn it and come back. So if parents also understand that, let them let them figure their own way out, sort of just guide and step aside and trust that everyone has that instinct in figuring their own way out, and in that, discovering what their innate talent is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think children are creative. They come that way, and it's up
Yeah.
to us to continue to grow that, encourage that, or to squash it, like some traditional education methods do. Yeah, so I think it's wonderful to see. Now, one of the questions we have is about parents who maybe are sensitive about their child experiencing failure or feeling bad. What's the message there? Sandy, what's been your experience?
No, I think um, the Asian culture, we have a tendency to not let children make mistakes, and also kind of focus on weaknesses. And I think we need to change that mindset a little bit. Let children make mistakes. Let children experiment, and because there's enormous learning from making mistakes. So that's, I think that's a really, really big one. And I think another very interesting insight, and something that I didn't find in psychology books, and I always talk to my children about it, and that is that we often think that the opposite of negativity is positivity. So positive psychology, be positive, learn to be positive, etc. And but I, again, something that somebody shared with me a long time ago, great insight, that the opposite of negativity is not positivity, it's actually gratitude. And it's through gratitude that we can cut negativity and negative thoughts and negative emotions. So having conversations with children around that, um, around how much we have compared to X, Y, or Z in X, Y, Z part of the world, and more focusing on the intangibles rather than the tangibles. That, okay, we have this object, or we have this television, or no, not that, but the intangibles: great health, great relationships, and so on. So yeah, I mean, some of these and of course the mirror neuron, Dan, and you know this far better than I do. I learn from you every time I talk to you, that it's really about role modeling behavior. Whatever adults do, children will eventually learn and imbibe. So really subtly also role modeling these things, um,
Yeah.
and children are carefully observing. Um, but love to have your thoughts on this
Yeah,
as
thinking about it, and children do watch us as parents, and they observe all our behaviors. But I'm sure what you're saying, Sandy, ties into the development of the Vega values, which are, empathy and excellence and innovation. And so we're not just helping students master content. We're building a whole person who can react to that. So I think that's a good point, Sandy, about allowing our students to understand and have the vocabulary to understand the opposite of negativity or negative is gratitude. So teach them to have gratitude, and that comes out in service learning. Give them opportunities to show that gratitude in their community, which is the SHRAM that we do at Vega is part of that. So we want to make sure our learning leaders. So that's another change in thinking, is our teachers are called learning leaders, because they are coming alongside to lead our students in their learning. Like you said, Shruti, they're not just presenting them with here's the problem, here's how to solve this math problem. Now you know that. Here's this. It's teaching them skills and the attitude to approach problems and solve them. And they're amazing. These students, as they go through a couple years of the program, become very creative in solving problems, but also they have great heart in looking for how their solutions can positively impact others. So it's great to see that. And so I think a lot of times we don't value as much the explicit teaching of students about stress, about their emotional reaction, about how to overcome difficulty, if we give them those skills in understanding that ties into this idea that Shruti's talked about, this box of limitations that forces us to react to it. And we can either recognize that, okay, I'm going through a stress period because I have these limitations and I don't know what to do, so I'm going to apply what I already know and look for a solution, versus facing a problem. If traditional method, you see a problem and you just say, I wasn't taught to solve that problem, so now I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. So yeah, it's an important skill, and we want our children to be resilient. That's going to help them in their professional world, especially in a future that we don't know. They're going to face a lot of problems that we can't even imagine. Shruti, what have you seen in the professional world? You've listed some examples there of, resilience and that box of limitations. How important is it for people today to have that mental toughness?
You said something really nice about children and creativity, Dan. It brings a quote to mind from Picasso. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it says, "All children are artists, and the problem is how to remain artists once we grow up." So creativity really is for everyone, right? I mean, you may think, oh, I'm talking so much about creativity because I'm from a directly creative field. But really, creativity is for everyone. And, as Picasso said, as kids, we're all artists, and we need to hold on to that as we move into the professional world, right? Because we need creativity everywhere. If our engineers were not creative, would they be thinking of cars that run on water? If our architects were not creative, would they be thinking of sustainable architecture? If our scientists were not creative, would they be able to solve problems that they face? And if you're ready for one more story, I'll tell you.
Sure,
And
yes.
this is a film we actually worked on, and it was such an interesting lesson. So a couple of years ago, right, the Indians sent a mission to the moon. It was called Chandrayaan 2, and it took us about 40, 50 odd days to reach the moon. Whereas half a century ago, the Americans sent the Apollo 11 to the moon, which reached in 4 days. Right now, so the Americans had a lot of money. They had this really powerful launch vehicle, and they could just throw the craft straight at the moon and get there. But the Indian scientists, they didn't have all the resources, so they had to innovate. Right, there was this huge obstacle they were facing. So if you look at a baseball and you're pitching a baseball, this is how you throw it, right? It needs a lot of power. But now imagine you tie a string to the ball and you swirl it around, and then you release it. It'll go a farther distance with much less power. So that's what the Indians did. They took the craft, they swung it around the earth, and then they released it for the moon. Now in the process, yes, it took them 40, 50 days. But if you look at the resources that were spent on it, the Americans spent in today's value $1.2 billion. And do you want to guess how much the Indian craft cost? It was one tenth, right?
Wow.
1/10 the cost, about 130 million. And I'm sure they did it in a very, very efficient manner as well, right? So today they are at the forefront of sustainable space technology. And why were they able to innovate? Because there was this obstacle, and they were resilient enough, and they had the skill set, right, of solving a problem. And that's the mindset they approached it with. It wasn't just like, hey, we can't do it. This is how I've seen people do it in the past, but I don't have those resources. So shut down. We're not going to the moon. But it was a different mindset. And I hope that, as not only as kids, but even when we grow up in our day-to-day lives, even what we're doing right now, right, talking to people in London and getting speakers from around the world, right, where we're learning to live with this lockdown and get really, really innovative. And it's just our resilience and our creativity that's carrying us through this period, I feel.
Yeah, and you used a key word, innovation. That's one of our Vega values. And I know Sandy, wisely included that as a key. And I think what helps create that, especially in today's world, is if you're in an organization that doesn't tolerate failure, then there will be no innovation, then no creativity. But if you're an organization that encourages people to try things and see if it works, knowing that a lot of things don't work, but giving people the freedom to operate in that environment, I think can help in the professional world create that innovation. I'm sure, Sandy, you've seen a lot of examples of that as you've worked in different industries as an entrepreneur. What would you say for you is the key to the value of mental toughness?
I mean, Dan, you know how hard it is for us to find talent for Vega Schools, and uh, and when we all our behavioral competencies include resilience, include the ability to think out of the box, to be a lateral thinker. And most of these, unfortunately, traditionally have not been valued by our examination system, by our the way the curriculum is designed. Fortunately, now India has is moving forward very quickly with the National Education Policy NEP 2020, which values a lot of these things. And I think now is a great time to start building the bridge between what schools are doing and what the real world needs. And Shruti, you're the country head of one of the most creative organizations in the world. How much do you value creativity? I'm kind of bounced deflecting this question to Shruti since she's the creative guru. And how do you assess creativity? And what's your message to the parents that
Right.
how much should they sort of emphasize on creativity for their children, um, given the needs of the real world?
Right. Well, first of all, I'm just a very small cog in the wheel in my organization, and just heading one particular department. Um, and look, what I would like, to talk about is something that's helped me be really creative, or be resilient, or deal with obstacles as and when they come. And if you allow me to borrow, a bit of management jargon, I'd like to call them my three C's, right? And that's craft, firstly. Secondly, it's collaborations, and thirdly, it's caring about a cause. And we can talk about all three of these for a bit. Um, One of my first jobs was writing anchor links in a music television where I worked. So I would write these lines for VJs, and they would read it off a teleprompter. And we typically had these, typical music television shows, and an hour-long show had 3 breaks in it. So thrice in every show, the VJ had to say, "Hey, I'll see you after a break." And we had to come up with really creative ways of saying this, put in a question, come back for the answer, or what have you, so that the viewers come back after the break. So 3 times in every show. And I was writing about 30-40 shows a week. So every week I had to come up with 100 ways just to say, go to a break and come back after a break. This is something I did at the beginning of my career, and I did this job for 2 years. So the point I'm trying to make is that one has there's no shortcut around knowing your craft and developing the right skills, and it's just not enough to know your craft, but you have to make learning your craft a lifelong practice, and you have to know your craft till it's muscle memory. So that's the basic point. The other point is on collaborations. Now, is it merely enough to collaborate? There's this really interesting incident from one of the shows we were working on, and this was way back. We were shooting in Rishikesh, and it involved a bunch of celebrities doing a cross-country race. They had to raft, and then they had to run, and like one of those treasure hunt type of things. And at the end of the day, there was the winner announcement. And now this day, it was raining, and we were losing light, and we had a huge chunk of the show still left to be shot. And we didn't have any lights. We were on an outdoor location. So the director's freaking out. The DOP is, yelling at the top of his lung, and the poor production guy is trying to coordinate lights that come all the way from Dehradun. And this driver who's come, with a fleet of cars to pick us up is watching this commotion, and then he walks up to us after a while and says, "Lights chahiye kya? Like, do you need lights?" "I have lights in my car." And we were like, "Wait, you have a lighting kit in your car?" we were a production crew. We could only think one way in terms of light. It meant a lighting kit. And he said, no, I have headlights in my car. That's how I've driven, in the dark through the jungle to come to you. And it was such a simple, innovative thing which we couldn't see. So, and sure enough, we used those gypsies, we lined them up, we floodlit the area. And that's how we shot our sequence. And we made the gypsies a part of the sequence, and it looked really nice. So the point I'm trying to make is you have to collaborate, and you have to learn to work with people who come from a diverse background, who are different from you, who have a different education, a different mindset. And, not only will this make the world a better place, but it'll give you a completely different perspective at the obstacle on hand. Um, so that's my second C. It's on collaboration. But the third, which brings these together, is caring about the cause. You have to have passion, right? Uh, and I mean, why do I love telling stories? Because I like entertaining people. But it's not just that. And every once in a while, you tell a story which actually impacts someone's life, and that is such a wonderful, powerful feeling. I remember we made a film on Kalpana Chawla, who's an astronaut, and this father wrote to us saying, "Can you give me a copy? My 7-year-old daughter loved the film, and she wants to watch it every day." And it was such a touching moment. So we have to really, remember why we are doing what we are doing, right? And this is, we've all heard of the golden circle of the what, why, and how, right? We all know what to do, which is a craft. We know how to do it. Collaboration is one way. But how often do we think about the why? Why are we doing something? What is the reason to get out of bed, right? And this is the North Star that guides us when things get really tough. And if there's something that you can do as educators, and we can do as parents, is to teach our children to find that thing that they're really passionate about, right? And if I can go back to Picasso, he said the meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of life is to give it away. And that is something that will make you really, really resilient, overcome any big obstacle, if you stay true to the why am I doing what I'm doing, and you truly believe in it. So that's my 2 cents on resilience and creativity, and what are the fundamentals we can teach our kids, which sadly are missing from a lot of traditional ways of thinking. I wasn't taught about this. I learned, after 30 years of my life had passed. And if I'd learned about this at a very formative, age, maybe I would have looked at things differently.
And do you think, Shruti, sorry, Dan, I'm just asking a short related question. Do you think that resilience, creativity, all these things, is there a greater need for them in the professional world today? Because a lot of parents are listening in, and what's your message to them about the need for developing these things young?
I mean, yes. I mean, we've spoken about it, and we've looked at examples on how in various professions one has had to be creative, and one needs the resilience. I think it's just the idea of embracing obstacles and looking at them as opportunities, that I find to be a very, very powerful idea, which in some way, like I said, directly leads to your, or connects with the problem solving approach that you're taking in the school, right? A problem is not something to look at and back down. A problem is something to excite you, to spur your creativity, because let's face it, life is going to hand us obstacles at every stage in life, whether it's as a kid, as a student, or and definitely much more so as you grow up in your personal life, and in your professional life. But um, every obstacle is really just an opportunity to be more creative, and our lives are richer because of this journey that we've had. And so, yes, I mean, there is no way around having a problem solving mindset, around a creative mindset, and looking at problems or obstacles to create and innovate. And because that's what we need, right? We need to discover newer and different ways of living, right? What we've been doing till now does not work. It does not apply in the current scenario. I mean, look at what's happening around us. Who would have ever thought we would be living in a completely different, and none of our education has, prepared us for this. So how do we know what it's going to be 10, 20 years from now? You can't imagine that future. So you can't give them a written text about anything, right? It's, you just have to figure it out as you go along. And that's something, whether professionally or personally, is a very good skill to have.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's kind of the intersection here with the excellence, with the skills or the craft, as you called it. You still need to have strong skills and excellence. You need to know what you're talking about, and that's going to give you the ability to solve those problems. And then, of course, collaborating with others. We don't have the answers all ourselves, and this is an example of that. I'm certainly learning from you two and getting other perspectives. And I come from a different culture, different background. So together we're working out, what are some solutions that we can do here. And that passion is important. And we want our kids to be, I want my boys to be passionate about something as they enter their adult life. But I think part of it is also teaching them how to be exposed to different things, and then allow them to try different things. And some of those things they won't like, but we're happy that we're able to provide for many students a variety of experiences that they can interact with, and they collaborate together on solving problems. And we're excited about what this is going to lead to in the long term for our students as they enter their work life. So it's less about my child's going to be either a doctor or an engineer or that sort of thing. It's more about how can I prepare my child to be who they can be, the best version of themselves, and give them the skills to be successful at it. Because we're not doing our job if they develop passion and they're very creative, but they don't have any hard technical skills, right, to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And then Shruti said something very interesting. She used a phrase. I think she was defining innovation here, new and better ways of doing things. And Steve, the co-founder of Vega Schools, he always defines innovation as new and better ways of doing things. And we know that education has largely focused on content and recalling content in an exam, while the world values people and organizations who constantly find new and better ways of doing things. I mean, companies like Google, Apple are living examples of companies who found new and better ways of doing things. Edison is an example, and Picasso is an example of. So individuals are examples of people who found. Love to sort of. Can you very briefly share the concept of Dok IV, which is, I think, would be very interesting for parents to know a little bit more about, and how that gets children into that zone of finding new and better ways of doing things.
So we see a lot of places now are focused on what they call inquiry based. We're asking questions, but PBL goes a little beyond that because we're challenging them with problems. We're giving them that box of limitations, but what that requires is more than just being able to recall an answer. And there's a concept called DOK, depth of knowledge, by a well-known educator and author, Webb, who came up with this construct where DOK1 level is recalling. So I can do inquiry, I can ask you questions, but it's not helpful if I'm only asking you what is the answer to this math problem. DOK2 adds pieces, but DOK4 essentially is the capstone, which it requires you to interact with the material, take what you know and apply it in a new and different way. And so we're teaching students, ultimately, you're going to have to create something, come up with something based on what you know about math and science and English and maybe poetry and music. Take all those pieces and we're going to throw a challenge up here and you're going to have to overcome that. But you're going to have to be creative, obviously, in order to apply all those things. And usually there's a little bit of a curveball thrown in, so it's not a straightforward thing. You get partway through and you realize, oh, well, this is a little different. Now I'm going to have to adjust course. So it's in that we're teaching students to be kind of resilient in their problem solving. But so for us, DOK, depth of knowledge, and Dok IV, we want all our questions and our work to push kids from Dok 1 level, basic recall of information, up to Dok 4, where they're really thinking and they're turning things over in their mind. So, for example, if they see a problem, let's say, one of the examples that our co-founder uses is we're designing a house and we need to buy some carpet, or this is a simple example. Do students know that this is a problem that their knowledge of how to find area can apply, and then their knowledge of finance or knowledge of other things? So we're not saying use the area formula to do this, use this formula to do that. We're saying, hey, can you do this? We need this. Can you solve this problem? And it's up to them to recall what they know and say, well, I know this, and maybe if I do it a little differently. So that's the DOK. It's the highest level of knowledge that shows that they truly understand something. They can turn it over in their mind and look at things from a different angle. So we're feeling like this, this emphasis constantly on higher depth of knowledge will result in that in our students, their ability to problem solve. So DOK 1 through 4 are the levels, but that's an important concept for our school.
Wow. You make me want to go back to school all over again.
It's it's exciting to see our students come up with creative things, and they've done some incredible projects, video projects and service projects. So it's really exciting to see what they come up with, and we certainly I want them to be just like my own kids. I want them to be more successful than me. I want them to be more creative than I am. I want them to have passion and to follow their dreams, and it's exciting just to watch them grow. So yeah, it's been a great conversation. If I can, let me just kind of share some key notes that I pulled out from hearing from you. I just love the concept of this box of constraints. So we've got to allow our kids to struggle and know that they're going to struggle, but that's a good thing. And we have to allow them to struggle, and we have to allow them to fail. But we're alongside them. We encourage them. We're not in front of them, stopping them or pointing them. We're along the side, helping them in that struggle. And we're going to teach them about stress, about how to overcome things. We're going to teach them character, why it's important to be who you are. What are you passionate about? What do you care about? Do you understand, collaboration and different people in different contexts? Those are all, I think, keys to building resilience in our kids. And as parents, we have to be careful not to jump in too soon and solve a problem for our children, because we may see a solution right away. But it's harder to step back and say, let's see how would you solve this problem, and see what they come up with. So that's some great stuff. Shruti, anything else you want to add to this conversation?
Oh, wow. No, I think we've tossed a lot of ideas around today, and like you said, the themes that emerge are, about basically, learning to work with limitations, learning to have a problem solving mindset, definitely skills and, things are, knowledge and learning to work with other people are important. It's, please give the kids, their North Star. And, it's just not enough to tell our kids that, hey, you should be a doctor when you grow up, or you should be an engineer when you grow up. It's why do you want to be a doctor, right? It's because I want to help people. And then there may be 50 different ways of doing this, right? I want to create new things, or I want to design, or I want to make, life easy. I want to design things. And then that's not necessarily an engineer, but 30 different ways of doing things, right? And then solving the problems to leading that. So I think that's a mindset that I personally feel that we need to have. And yes, excited to have organizations and educators and people such as you and Sandy to be taking that direction with our generation, so that our future lives and our world looks much different than it's looking today.
Thank you. Sandy, anything else you want to add?
No, I think both of you have shared awesome insights, and there's something that a friend of mine did share with me very recently, and he said that as we as children learn from us on how we can be, more mentally tougher and more resilient. What can we learn from our children? Our children also, in some ways, are very resilient. Um, and I guess we as parents can also observe them and see what we can learn from them. So I thought that was a very interesting insight that a friend shared, and I thought might be interesting to share. Of course, physically, we already know, with the COVID pandemic, um, children are far more resilient than adults, and thankfully, in fact, there was an article in The Economist a couple of days ago, and it said that there's roughly a 1/10 chance of a child dying of COVID than in a traffic accident. So, uh, and unfortunately, schools are still closed, physically closed. So hopefully that will change soon as well. And we're looking forward to uh, to a better world, a world that learns from this pandemic, learns from this biggest obstacle that at least we have possibly faced in our lifetimes, and our children learn from us, and we learn from our children.
That's true. Thank you, Sandy. We do learn a lot from our kids. Their innate creativity, I think, is often we get a kick out of that, seeing the kind of answers they come up with to solutions to problems. So, yeah, thank you for your time, everybody, and I appreciate the talk. It's nice to connect with you, Shruti, and wish you all the best. Sandy, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan, for putting this together, and all of you have a great weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to having our kids back in school.
Yes, yes, and we'll have to have you come visit the school, Shruti, when we're back live.
Absolutely, would love to.
Yeah, and see what they're doing. Good.
Great.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.